Hello and welcome to today's edition of Nation Watch. It's Sunday, 18th May 2025, and we are edging closer and closer to regional and general elections. Meanwhile, the People's Progressive Party and the Guyana Elections Commission are silent on the question of biometrics and the clean voters list. Clearly, there is the deliberate action to prevent the cleaning of our voters list. There are clear roadblocks in place to prevent biometrics and the use of biometrics for the purpose of identification at the place of poll in these elections. These are issues that still are on the table for discussion, for settlement, and we will see about that in the coming days. Today, we're going to be discussing the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. We are going to be digging into these matters. But before we do, there are a couple of issues that I'd like to discuss. We received reports that very recently, the police in Division Number 1, Barima Waini, allegedly went to a house across the Barima River from Morawana. You know, Morawana is our official port of entry in the Northwest District. Well, Region 1, we call it these days. The police reportedly went to this house. They allegedly forced their way into the house and beat up a gentleman in there, a senior citizen. They ransacked the house, it is alleged, and removed a sum of money said to be in the region of $20 million. We do not know yet if the money has been officially lodged. We do not know if the money has ever been returned to the owners. The report we have is that someone from the household recently came back from Venezuela, and the police visited that house and conducted an exercise. We understand that the occupants of the house have fled Morawana, the Morawana area, and have taken refuge in another part of the country because they are fearful of the police repeating the kind of action. We do not have a full report on what transpired, prompting the police to do what they did, as alleged. And we do not know if charges will be laid in this particular instance, but we're watching this particular matter. We reported here on Nation Watch some time ago that the police in Mabaruma, which is the headquarters of the division, had really used tremendous and unnecessary force on 4 Warao citizens of our country from Imbatiro in a drug-related matter. We understand from residents in Mabaruma that beatings at the Mabaruma police station, the beating by the police of persons in their custody, is a normal, very normal activity. We are concerned, and we called before on the authorities to look into what is happening at Mabaruma, and we repeat that call emphatically today. Somebody in authority needs to see what is happening in Mabaruma with a view to bringing some sense to the police behavior and operation in that particular area. The Villages in the North Rupununi recently received an application from a citizen for visitation, and there was a response, a rejection of the invitation. The initial action was the denial of the visit. Grounds were stated. Public opinion treated with the matter. In the end, the Tushao of Anai, which is a grouping of 5 villages, recanted and offered an apology, admitting in the process that there was no consultation with village councillors or residents, and that essentially, as the Tushao of the 5 villages, he acted alone. There was also the situation where the Arnaputa Upper Boroboro NDC signed on that document as well, whereas that Neighborhood Democratic Council is not governed by the Amerindian Act, is not subject to the Amerindian Act, and really has no authority under any legislation that I know of to prevent persons from visiting that area. So it's quite interesting. It was a manifestation of PPP manipulation. It was a manifestation of PPP dominating village leaders and neighborhood democratic council chairman in the area to prevent a visit by this businessman who expressed an interest to visit the area. In the process, there was a claim by a particular Tushao, and this is the Tushao of Masara, I think it was, that he did not sign that document, though a signature purporting to be his appeared on the document, and we'll have a look at that in one moment. The document that was sent to the applicant, if you can pull that up closer on the screen, we'll see that there's a signature there with Bartholomew. And usually, when a Tushao signs a document, there's a village stamp, a village council stamp that is used. And you can see just below there, another Tushao had signed and, in fact, used the stamp. And you can see 2 other Tushaos also signed using their village stamp. But this particular one, there is no village stamp. And I'll ask you to have you be the judge, have a look at that signature circled in red, and we'll show you the signature, which is purportedly the forgery, in circled in blue. We'll put that up there so you can have a look and make your own judgment. See, this is not just manipulating village leaders. If this is true, it means that persons are now forging the signatures of our indigenous leaders to accomplish political ends. If you see the signatures entirely different from the last one you saw, I don't know if it's possible for us to put them up together side by side, but if it is, then you'll be able to make a better judgment as to whether or not this is the gentleman's signature. But it is being alleged that his signature was forged for the purposes of signing a document denying entry to the village of Masara, the village of which he is the elected Tushao. So if perchance we can get the two together, we'll do so you can see the extent to which persons are going to exert control over indigenous leaders in this country. In the meantime, while we get that up there, the National Tushaos Council conference starts tomorrow, and I'm pretty sure that this Tushao, if it is in fact a case of forgery, will, in the course of of the conference raised this issue. And it is very interesting that the NTC is being held from the 19th to the 23rd of May, when usually it is in July. But this is clearly another political maneuver to ensure that indigenous peoples gather in one place and are available for the political leadership of the People's Progressive Party to have their ears and their full attention as they prepare for elections 2025. These indigenous leaders are likely to be recruited by the PPP for political purposes as they head, as we as a country head into the elections. So I think we have those together. You can have a look and you'll see those two signatures side by side. You make your judgment. But we believe that this is the ultimate action by operatives of the People's Progressive Party to achieve their nefarious political ends, going to the extent of forging people's signatures would appear to do so. We know that in the last local government election, dead people signed on forms supporting the party's list, the People's Progressive Party's list, and so on. And we know for sure that Jagdeo was so embarrassed that he in fact apologized to the family of the deceased who signed. So the National Tushaus Council Conference, which starts tomorrow, is going to be held under the theme Robust Governance for Sustainable Village Development. Well, the backbone of this country is agriculture, and we don't have a national agricultural development plan, whether sustainable or not. And to speak of robust governance for sustainable village development without any action plan seems to me to be nothing but a street corner gaffe. But we'll see as it unfolds. My own gut feeling is that indigenous peoples are being called to this conference at this time for political purposes. And you recall from the last NTC that Vincent Henry, Member of Parliament at one stage, and myself at another, were both ejected. In Vincent's case, he was ejected from the conference and I was physically pushed out at the entrance, prevented from entering the venue of the conference, when in fact the Amerindian Act speaks to the conference of the NTC being open to all Amerindian Guyanese. We will continue to track the NTC conference because we believe that one of the critical issues, while the PPP will seek to campaign, one of the critical issues that the leaders will raise is the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy and its impact on their lives, particularly those who live on the border with Venezuela. People are fearful, people are uncomfortable, there's no interaction between government officials and the people who live there. And my information is that Tushaus are coming to tomorrow's conference prepared to speak to the government on the question of their safety, security, and well-being on the border in the face of threats from our Western neighbor. So we will continue to track that. I now present to you my guest, Mr. Ronald Austin, Ambassador Ronald Austin. He is, in my view, the foremost of experts in this particular field. Mr. Austin has been working in the Foreign Service for most of his life, and one of the areas that he has been focusing on throughout that distinguished career of his is the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. Welcome to Nation Watch, Mr. Austin. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you once again. And I feel like you're a permanent guest in a sense. I've been here so often, but I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of getting our Guyanese compatriots to understand exactly what it is we're facing as far as the border controversy is concerned, generally, and specifically with the forthcoming elections that Venezuela purports to hold on the 25th. A slap in the face, really, on the eve of the 59th, I think, anniversary of our independence.
It is indeed. And what is alarming for citizens like me is that Guyana plans to confront the Venezuelans and particularly their action intending to hold this election with a concert and the mounting of flags. Seems to me to be, apart from weak, somewhat irresponsible.
Well, let's err on the side of caution. I'm not sure what exactly will happen I think on the 24th. I don't know if it's a musical concert, if it's a patriotic concert. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But whatever has been reported as the event to take place, in my judgment, and I've said this before, I don't think it's sufficient or adequate for the occasion. This is an occasion where we should have displayed national unity in political terms. That is, have all of the political forces involved in Guyana. That is the government plus the opposition, and all entities and agencies and persons who can help in unifying the country, to bring all of those people and the agencies and entities together on the 24th, to indicate to Venezuela, to tell Caracas that Guyana is totally united on this question. I don't think we're there yet.
I share your view. I don't think we're there yet either. And a bit later on in the conversation, we'll discuss a motion which was tabled by the People's Progressive Party in the National Assembly. But there were 3 incidents within recent days. From the reports that we're reading, there were 3 armed attacks within 24 hours in the Cuyuni River. Attacks on Guyana Defense Force patrol in the river or on the river, and the Cuyuni River, I believe, is entirely within the boundaries of Guyana.
Yes, it is.
Particularly in that area. And it is reported that the persons who carried out the attack on our Guyana Defense Force patrols were persons dressed in civilian clothing. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued a statement in that regard, which we'll deal with, but I first want to look at the reaction of Guyana's, I believe the title of the office is now Chief of Defense, is it?
Chief of Defense Staff, I think.
Yeah. I know it used to be Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff, yeah.
So let me stick with Chief of Staff. Pardon me, but I want to look at what the head of the Guyana Defense Force had to say after this incident. I'm not going to the press conference, but I'm going to the engagement with people in the area where he had something to say.
By your own position, not the fight, but how you look and what you do. Anybody, and I want you to share this around, anybody, Guyanese in particular, who vote in in that election, they will be arrested, charged, and jailed because it's a serious offense. Good? It's a serious offense. And we're watching everyone who are going to be and where they're going to be on that day. Also, I want you, if you see anything that is going wrong, you report it to us or the police or one of your village elders. Guyanese must not participate in something that is unjust, irrelevant, and illegal. Very important. What Venezuela does, that's their problem. But we will not do it. Secondly, importantly, we got Venezuelans are working on this side of the shore. Any one of them who participate in the voting will not be allowed to come back across here. And I want you to report it. They cannot vote that Essequibo their own and come here and work. And I'm asking you to report it. We also be watching. Thirdly, starting from tomorrow, my soldiers, the walkless ground here with the police. These are not here. And the police.
It's rather interesting, this address to residents by Mr. Omar Khan. On the one hand, there's an admission, a nationally known fact that we do not as a country have a sufficient number of soldiers to do the kind of work involved in defending our porous borders. But here it is, he's saying they'll be watching everybody. They'll be watching everybody. And I could name border locations between Guyana and Venezuela where there are no soldiers.
Yeah. But we have a very long border.
Yes, no, but I'm talking about places with population and so on, and there are no soldiers. But that is just an aside. There's a contradiction here. He says that Venezuelans working on our side who participate in the election on the 25th of May to elect a Venezuelan governor for what they call La Guayana Essequibo will not be allowed to come back. But before that, he said that anyone, particularly Guyanese, and that means Venezuelans too, who participate in the process will be arrested and jailed.
I have a difficulty.
And one second. Outside of the contradiction, if you jail somebody, they're here. You know, and he says they won't be allowed to come back. But outside of that, why would the top military official in this country go around threatening Guyanese instead of assuring them about their safety?
Well, that is the point I wanted to make. But he recognized he was not talking of the shooting incident. He was talking of the forthcoming elections.
Yes.
But I remember when the idea of the elections came up, that the government had put the Minister of Home Affairs to speak on this matter, which I thought, in my judgment, it was an error. This is a diplomatic, in my judgment, a diplomatic matter. And therefore, what you needed was persuasion and education. The Minister of Home Affairs said that anybody the governor who's elected, the person who's elected governor of Essequibo will be hanged. In like manner, in similar vein, listening to the head of the Guyana Defense Force, his tone is threatening. In these circumstances, I believe that you should inform the people. Tell them what is on the horizon. Tell them what is expected of them as Guyanese citizens. and appeal to their patriotic sense. I don't think threatening those people on the border in these circumstances is the best way to go. I think for a number of reasons, it can have the opposite effect to what is intended. You threaten them, they may decide, well, look, I might as well form an alliance with the Venezuelans to get protection. These matters, and the government has to take these things seriously, should be handled by professionals and should be handled with a certain sensitivity to the implications of the situation there on the ground. You don't want to frighten people, you don't want to scare people. You want them to understand. And if they understand, I'm sure they're going to take the right course of action.
But they're already frightened by the imminent threat. And two things here, Ambassador Austin. I recall Minister Ben saying, he actually specified a particular location. He said, whoever is elected governor of Essequibo in the Venezuelan election, if they come to Ana Regina, they will be charged for treason and they'll be hanged. So if they live in, if such a person is elected and they go to Bartica, or they go to Mabaruma, or they go to Port Kaituma, they're safe, according to Ben.
According to him, yes.
Right? As long as they don't go to Ana Regina. I don't know what is the significance of Ana Regina in the context of what he said, but it seems to me as though the demographic, the Ana Regina demographic may have been his focus. His focus because the other areas are largely populated by indigenous Guyanese,
yes.
And they didn't feature in the treason equation.
But given the it's not conflict. It's the difference between the coast and the interior and the regions. I don't think it's wise to say to those indigenous people that you're going to hang them if they turn out to be the governor of the Essequibo Basin and Ana Regina. Those people, from all that I've been reading within the last weeks and months, as a result of my work on the border committee, are a bit apprehensive about what is going on the coast. Mostly because they're not being told anything. I have a major difficulty with the way the government is going about this exercise. This should have involved national planning. This should have involved people who understand the regions, people who understand the dynamics between the coast and the interior, the psychology of the people in that area, and the pressures those people are facing. Because they must be facing a lot of pressure based on what they're hearing, based on what they're seeing, and based on what they're told. But what you're getting is the Minister of Home Affairs makes a threat. The GDF head goes there, he makes a threat. That is not, those two things cannot represent national policy of the government.
And what the second point I was going to make is that Ben spoke as Minister of Home Affairs, and you offered your view on that. But the Minister of Defense is the President.
Yes.
And he is not speaking. He is not talking to the citizens of this country and giving them any assurance except to say that we have informed our international allies. And his deputy in office, but senior in rank, Bharat Jagdeo, has made it clear that they're not going to do their diplomacy in public. So where do we go and to whom do we turn if the Minister of Defense, the head of state, the head of government, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is not speaking to the nation?
You're hitting a very important point. While we make these broad, seemingly attractive statements in diplomatic terms that we're going to appeal to this government and that government, and we'll come back to whether these governments will actually support you if matters really turn for the worse on the ground. But I say this in all honesty, having been in the business for a very long time, that we talk about CARICOM, we talk about the Commonwealth, we talk about getting assistance from individual countries like the United States and so on. But that diplomacy is not subserved or is not buttressed by what you know about your own people there on the borders. We leave them out all the time. And I plead a bit guilty. It's not until, I think, last night or the night before, when I was reading about what is going on in the region, especially where those people have businesses. Those people have families in different parts of those areas. And I don't think they're being given the kind of guidance from the center as to what they should know, for example, about elections. Or more often than not, this is my discovery in talking to try to get in touch with some of our own people in the regions, is that they hear, for example, that the government has reacted sharply to something that Venezuela has said, but nobody's told them anything. I said the reason why the government needed to react sharply, because, and let me trip over myself a bit, I was talking to the Region 7 chairman, and he was nonplussed. He didn't know what was going on. He was hearing rumors that in other regions there was activity, there was some suggestion that there's fear, misunderstanding, confusion. But he could not give me a comprehensive or coherent response to a number of questions I was asking. For example, are you aware of the decision of the ICJ? Unaware of it. Have you been approached by the administration to indicate whether there was Venezuelan interference on the ground in your region? The answer is no. Are you briefed on the border controversy? He's in Region 7. The answer is no. So while we are...
And this shooting incident is in Region 7.
Region 7, yes. Yeah. While we're scoping out these grandiose diplomatic positions, again, as I said, I feel guilty. We're tending to forget that the regions in this particular context are just as, if not more important than the other aspects of our diplomacy.
Well, it's interesting that you raised that, Ambassador Austin, because there have been video recorded statements from several community leaders and regional leaders from within the county of Essequibo. Stereotypical statements reaffirming that Essequibo is Guyana's and rejecting Venezuela's claim and so on. And every one of the persons you see featuring in those recorded statements that were published are PPP affiliates. The regional chairpersons who featured in those recordings are from regions which the People's Progressive Party has, for want of a better word, control of.
Yeah.
The regional chairman of Region 7 is from the AP and UAFC.
Yes.
He was not one of the persons who featured in those pre-recorded statements.
No.
But the regional chairman from the PPP in Region 1 featured.
Yes.
So it begs the question. Firstly, what is one Guyana? And secondly, Does the government value the outpouring of support from the opposition on this question of Venezuela's aggression towards Guyana?
Well, I've seen no indication that they value the support or the input of the opposition. I raised in the border committee approximately 2 weeks ago. I even said that I prayed that whatever was done, it was absolutely necessary that it must be done in national terms, that is, involving the opposition. And I specifically raised a question of the regions because I was talking to the chairman of Region 7. I was being guided by him and to a less extent by yourself on what is going on. And in researching and looking at this matter, I discovered these videos. I saw 3 of them. One from Barino, Winey area, and 2 others. But what struck me, there was no opposition participation in those areas, and also the statements that were being read by these individuals was the same statement. And I said it in the committee, but I got the impression that people who read the statements were not convinced about what they're saying. If in the context of the propaganda war we have to wage with Venezuela, if we put somebody out there to read a statement, that person must read that statement as though they actually believe in what they're saying, that this is our sovereign territory and Venezuela has no right to hold the elections in this area. Now, the wider question you asked, about whether the government values the opposition. I think you're now aware of the consequences of the non-consultation with the opposition and the reaction of the leader of the opposition to what was going on.
Yeah.
I have tried to convey in the committee that the leader of the opposition also faces difficulties within his own party whenever he goes to see the president or whenever he takes a national position on this question. And people within his own organization will say to him, but you're doing these things, but you're not getting anything, the recognition that you talk about in supporting the administration. And I've warned about this, that you can't ask him to go and support the president every time. And then at the end of it all, there are matters I don't want to raise at this interview, but some of it does not augur well for the relationship between the opposition and the party on this specific issue. You cannot have the question of national unity and the border controversy as a rhetorical device or an exercise. It has to be meaningful. If you want the opposition involved, you have to pay attention to what they're asking you to do on this particular question. Examine what they're asking and see whether it comports with what you want to do. But don't accept the propositions of the opposition and just ignore anything that they said. The leader of the opposition has met the president, in my recollection, on 3 occasions, sorry. And on every occasion, he left questions to be answered by the government. And those questions, in most cases, have not been answered. Specifically, for example, the need, and we've discussed this, for a whole of nation information exercise. Can't get off the ground up to now. We still have not told the people of Guyana what is the background, for example, to the forthcoming elections Venezuela wants to hold in the Essequibo. We have not told them the reason why, for example, you mentioned the shooting in the Cuyuni. Why is there shooting in the Cuyuni? Why it is the men who shot in the Cuyuni are in civilian clothes? That is a racket Venezuela has been engaging in for the longest while. And if you check, you'll discover they're syndicatos.
But even if they're not, and they're Venezuelan military, it's just a case of Venezuela playing it safe to ensure that they are not accused of military aggression against Guyana.
Yes, well, these guys,
These guys,
sometimes
yeah.
it's their own, they're soldiers in civilian dress. If you attack them on that, you're going to say, no, it's the syndicatos. But those syndicatos, or those other military auxiliaries they have in those regions, cannot do those things without the authority or the blessing of the Venezuelan military.
Ambassador Austin, look, it is widely believed that the syndicatos, that criminal gang, that gang is controlled by a military general in the Venezuelan military system.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
it is easy in such a situation for the official military to distance itself from the situation by sending these people forward. And the second point here is that with the troop buildup on the Venezuelan side of the border, it is not going to be easy for criminals to pass the military front line and enter Guyana.
Yes.
Unless with the unless with the express approval of the Venezuelan military. So I don't know who Mr. Khan is fooling or trying to fool. This is clearly a military operation against the Guyana Defense Force, and we must call it what it is.
Yes, a military operation against it. Yes, not only the defense force, against this country.
Against this country.
Now, you can't just look at another incident in the community and not connect it to the wider context of the border controversy. They do these things to wear us down, to exhaust Guyana, to push us to the point where we would say, well, look, let us stop getting involved with all these shooting incidents, all the harassment that is going on. You know what we'll do? We as a people will go to the president and say, look, sir, we're tired of this. It's harming us in so many ways, economically, politically, psychologically. Why don't you have a discussion with Maduro and tell him, look, we agree. We can't take any more. Call this whole thing off. They know exactly what they're doing. If you count the number of harassing or events or actions Venezuela has taken against this country throughout the 70s, throughout the 80s, into the 90s, there's a reason why they're doing it.
Sustained pressure.
Sustained pressure. And I listening to Major Khan, Brigadier. I'm not sure what. Brigadier Khan. That connection is being made. This latest incident is not an end in itself. And there was a previous incident a few months ago, as you might remember, where our soldiers were badly wounded.
6 of them, yeah.
Now, Guyanese looking on are asking themselves all kinds of questions. And these questions are not being answered. Why is there this persistent attack on our soldiers? And the countermeasures we are supposed to take are not in evidence.
Well, I know that you have good reason to remember the gentleman as Major Khan.
Yes,
we all do
yes,
as a
yes,
nation
yes,
have good
yes,
enough
yes,
reason
yes.
to remember him as Major Khan.
Yes.
But he's brigadier. And this whole business looks... Ambassador, I'll tell you what. From the bombing of those pontoons back in 2008, I think it was, the other events, the flyovers and so on that took place, the attack on our troops when 6 were injured, and Venezuela labeling it the Guyana Defense Force attacking civilian Venezuelans, unarmed, I believe the word was.
Yes.
And I believe the report went on to say that at least one of them had died. Up to that stage, I think Later on, we learned that 2 had died. Venezuela, again, and these 3 attacks within recent times, 3 in 24 hours, according to what I read. And we'll discuss Guyana's position and Venezuela's response in a minute. But Venezuela, in my view, is doing 2 things, or seeking to do 2 things. One, keep their official military unexposed in all of this action so that they can, for want of a better term, keep it legal. So it's not Venezuela attacking Guyana. Secondly, they can blame the Guyana Defense Force, as they tried to do in the first instance, as being the aggressors against Venezuelan civilians.
Yes.
And they clearly have a PR plan with which they're working. And they're disseminating their narrative on these issues far and wide, while Guyana is sort of rolling over to say, we are examining this, we are investigating that, we are inquiring into this, we have consulted with our friends and allies internationally and so on. Guyana comes over as having a weak public relations operation, if any at all, a weak diplomatic response, inadequate diplomatic response. And Guyana appears to be in a place where it either does not know how to or chooses not to use its UN security seat in this matter, or its relationship and membership of the United Nations.
Yeah. You make some very good points. You see, in diplomacy, when something happens, it's not sufficient for you to tell the population, we're consulting, we're in contact. You should be in a position, the moment the incident occurs, to alert some international organization and have that organization meet as quickly as possible to denounce what has transpired. And the options, we have several options here. I don't know why we can't ask CARICOM to convene for an extraordinary session on some of these matters. I don't know why we can't have an open meeting of the Security Council based on the threat to our national security. But these things, as I said, have to be part of a diplomatic program. You can't wait until the incident has happened, then you're trying to play catch up, in the sense of trying to decide what it is you're going to do. The incident happens, you must be in a position to trigger some mechanism that can alert the region, the rest of the world, that you have a problem here. There is no other border controversy, in my judgment, my understanding, my knowledge, right now as we speak, in which there have been so many incidents between the two states that have the differences. Now, history will tell you that if you keep on having repeated incidents on a border or in any particular context, there's going to reach a point where there's going to be some major event or explosion. It's bound to be. I don't think not every time that there's a clash between the GDF and the sindicatos or the disguised military in Venezuela is going to be a simple operation where 1 or 2 people are hurt or injured. There's going to be a big incident at some point. The closest we got it was when the naval vessel approached the FPSOs. That could have been a very dangerous incident. And thank God, it did not evolve into anything more serious than that. But you add all these things up. Add the attacks by the military. Add the FPSOs. Go back to you mentioned the bombing there, the boarding of the ExxonMobil vessel in 2013,
The detention of the vessel
and
and
detention of the
taking it
vessel.
into Venezuelan waters.
Now, any normal sentient human being would ask himself the question, why?
And we do nothing about it. And a simple report into a very serious occurrence in our country and in the life of our military is not forthcoming. We lost a helicopter. We lost, I think it was 5 very senior military personnel. And a simple thing like a report on that issue to the nation is not forthcoming. You would recall that when there was the Ankoko issue, Prime Minister Burnham, as he then was, addressed the nation on the issue.
On the issue, yes.
But we have a vice president who holds ministerial portfolio for all the sectors in the country, it seems, and a president who finds time to dance when he should be dealing with serious issues. And neither of them speak to us as a nation on these matters, Mr. Austin. And it is, it is irresponsible in my view and disrespectful as well.
I agree with you. As I said, with Venezuela, by now, we must have some plan, because what they've been doing over the last 30, 40 years is essentially the same thing. And there is a paradigm which the government can follow. There is a need, whenever you have an incident like the one that just occurred, for somebody to address the nation and to say exactly what happened and why it happened and what are the implications for the event. As it is, as we speak right now, I don't think most Guyanese can really explain to you in detail what it is, what happened in the Cuyuni within the last 48 hours, because they don't have the details.
But let's see what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had to say about the incident. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement. It's dated May 15, 2025. It's on the screen. It says that on May 15, 2025, shortly after midnight, armed men in civilian clothing on the Venezuelan shore along the Cuyuni River between Itorengbang and Macapa carried out 3 separate attacks on troops of the Guyana Defense Force who were conducting riverine patrols. In response, the Guyana Defense Force took appropriate action and no rank sustained injury. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana via diplomatic communication to the Ministry of People's Power for Foreign Relations of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has registered its condemnation of these attacks and requested that a thorough investigation be carried out by the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the perpetrators be apprehended and brought to justice. The ministry recalled to the Ministry of People's Power for Foreign Relations of Venezuela and a similar incident which occurred on February 17, 2025, immediately after which Guyana insisted that Venezuela take action to prevent further attacks on Guyana Defense Force soldiers from Venezuelan territory and apprehend and prosecute the perpetrators. Further, it is the intention of the ministry, as it did with the incident of February 17, 2025, to bring these latest incidents to the attention of the international community. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in collaboration with the responsible government ministries will continue to monitor the situation and take all appropriate actions where necessary. Guyanese citizens can't be happy with this response.
No.
Cannot be happy with this response. It comes back to what I was saying earlier. We have spoken with our international allies.
Yeah.
This is like an abusive relationship. You get beat up over and over and over, and you're saying, let's talk about it.
Yeah, but the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for example, could have convened a press conference and be robust in denouncing and opposing. The Venezuelans are not going to mount an inquiry into what happened. On both occasions, this one and the previous occasion, They said to us, look, it's a false flag operation. It's you all who are trying to invade our country. And we've never responded to that.
But the statement is bland. It's weak.
Anodyne.
How can... And I mean, in the face of all this, a president dancing to butterfly. What was it? The butterfly? The commander-in-chief?
Well, the man, he's a happy man.
Well, there's another word for happy these days. Well, they don't use it anymore.
No, but seriously, I think it is good if we could spend a minute or two discussing
I want to, because I'm going...
discussing the responses.
I'm going to the response. Venezuela, in a communique which was reported on here, the line says, Venezuela rejects Guyana's allegations of military aggression, calling it a US-backed false flag operation to escalate tensions over the contested Essequibo region. This is what Venezuela is saying. And this convinces this citizen of this country, who was born in the Barima River, that the aggression exercised towards our troops in those 3 attacks were acts of aggression by the government of Venezuela.
Yes, but
Why would it say that this thing is a false flag if it had no knowledge of it? Venezuela didn't say, well, we take note of your report and we deny involvement and we will investigate. It says it's a false flag.
But they said that also when the incident involving the naval vessel advancing towards the FPSO.
Yeah.
And I pointed out to the people concerned that we should have immediately made mincemeat of that assertion that it was a false flag operation, because it doesn't make sense in economic or political terms for us to attack the very source of our economic strength at the moment. And similarly, in this question, why would we put soldiers in civils to shoot at our soldiers? But the thing is, whenever Venezuela responds, we say nothing. You'll hear nothing after this response saying it's a false flag operation. You'll hear nothing about the matter until another incident occurs, and you'll get, incidentally, that statement you read just now. If you look at the previous statement that was issued when you had the shooting in a different part of the Essequibo, it's almost exactly the same statement.
Well, it is typical of the PPP. It's the same thing of the regional and village leaders in the Essequibo that we talked about.
Yes.
But I want to dig deeper into this report, Mr. Austin. This report is headlined, Venezuela denounces false flag operation in the Cuyuni River dispute. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and I hope the government again is listening, because it seems as though you missed this communique and the report associated with it. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has vehemently rejected allegations made by the Guyana Defense Force on May 15, 2025, accusing Venezuelan troops of launching attacks against Guyanese forces in the Cuyuni River. And I want to read that piece again. Accusing Venezuelan troops of launching attacks against Guyanese forces in the Cuyuni River. That's instructive in its own right.
Yes.
It goes on to say, in an official statement, Venezuelan authorities asserted that the intelligence gathered by its Bolivarian National Armed Forces refutes the claim, branding them part of a new false flag operation aimed at destabilizing the region. Venezuela argues that these accusations are part of a coordinated strategy to portray Guyana as a victim and artificially inflame border tensions. The government's communique condemns the allegations as manipulative propaganda allegedly engineered by U.S. Southern Command laboratories to justify what Caracas calls transnational plunder on the disputed Essequibo territory. It goes on to say that Venezuela reaffirms commitment to peace and sovereignty, and the sovereignty they speak of is over the Essequibo, and that's fundamental to us as a nation, because it goes on to say here, and Caracas also reaffirmed its historical claim to the Essequibo, declaring the sun of Venezuela rises in the Essequibo, a symbolic assertion of its unwavering stance in the century-long territorial dispute with Guyana. Ambassador Austin, the Venezuelans have and are using to great effect a public relations campaign,
Yes.
for which Guyana seems to have absolutely no answer.
No, I don't think anybody can say with any seriousness that our PR campaign in response to the provocations from Venezuela is what it should be. And now we must also ask ourselves, historically, nations have used this idea of a false flag operation as an excuse for major military action of one state against another. I mean, it's not an exact parallel, but that's what the Hitler did in relation to Poland. He invaded Poland after he said the Polish military had killed people on the border there with Germany. When a nation is doing that, and here again, I don't wish to sound as I'm preaching, but we have to be very careful with when we're accused of being the aggressor. I mean, it's ridiculous to the average Guyanese. It might be ridiculous to the two of us, but what about somebody who is not here in Guyana, or they're far away in a different part of the world? In my judgment, we have to keep on making the case that in the entire history of this the border controversy, the peaceful nation has been Guyana. We have never invaded any part of Venezuela. They've gone into Ancoco. They've harassed us in various parts of the Essequibo, and we have been the peaceful one. Yet, even in The Hague on the last occasion, then we asked for provisional measures, and Delcy Rodriguez appeared before the court. She denounced Guyana as an aggressive state.
What was Guyana's response?
Well, that's the point they're making to you. I've also raised in our committee, and indirectly with some important friends I have, this idea that the Venezuelans are saying that the government of Guyana is a puppet of ExxonMobil, of the Southern Command, and so on. Those are dangerous things which require a response. You can't delegitimize a state like that unless you propose to take some action against that state further down the line. It's not only the state itself, but the head of state has come in for a lot of sharp criticism and denunciation. You can't leave those things hanging. There must be a robust response to them. We're not an aggressive state. We can't be. We don't have the capacity to be aggressive against Venezuela. But yet we say nothing.
With a population that is about equal to the size of the Venezuelan military, how could we?
Yes.
But I want to, as you speak, indicate to our viewing audience, or Guyanese citizens, what Guyana will look like, God forbid, if Venezuela ever succeeds in its mission. This is what Guyana looks like in the outline, and the Venezuelans are claiming that this is what our map ought to look like.
Yes, that map, I'd put it in every school in Guyana, the university, the trade union, the offices of the trade unions, public buildings, and so on. Because we tend to forget, even as you and I speak, That is not one challenge we're facing on our borders. There is the one in the
Suriname.
east from Suriname. And I don't know if you've noticed, but just after we went to The Hague on the last occasion, the government of Suriname wrote the ICJ to say, look, we also have a problem with Guyana as
Yeah.
far as the new river triangle is concerned. Now, people don't realize now that Ghana has a lot of resources because of the oil. There's a time when dealing with both questions, and I can speak from the vantage point of the foreign ministry, it almost exhausted this country. It was not easy handling the one in the west and the one in the east. And depending on how we handle this current matter with the elections and the aftermath of the elections, it might well trigger some kind of activity or response on the part of Suriname. Suriname has never allowed an opportunity to slip when we have problems with Venezuela of not trying to needle us in one way or another. President Granger has a booklet in which he describes how challenging and demanding, and I think the word he used was exhausting, it was for us, speaking from the vantage point of a military person, handling both questions at the same time. So that map, I think, should be placed all over this country, because I don't think the average citizen quite understand or is convinced as to the seriousness of the question of the border problems that we face in the east and the west.
And Suriname never misses an opportunity at conferences to present their version of the map of Suriname, which includes our territory.
It happened quite recently, not 2 months ago.
Yeah, they never missed that opportunity. But I also want to show Guyanese what, without Essequibo, what our offshore resources will look like. And it's not really an exciting prospect. If you look at that area outlined northeast of Guyana there, in that area, without Essequibo, I don't believe that the offshore area, I believe if Essequibo goes, that offshore area outlined will also go.
That's where the oil
And
is,
that's where all of the oil is.
oil is coming.
And this tells you what motivates Venezuela's aggression, and why it is that their aggression is at this time.
This is a dagger pointed at the very heart of our country.
Yes.
And could I say, even though I've been at this business, as you indicated in your introduction, for a very long time, there's something that I did not know about Essequibo. Of the 10 regions, 6 are
Yes.
in the Essequibo region.
Yeah.
So it's,
You
secondly,
discovered this 2 weeks ago.
well, I was shocked. I mean, I mean, I confess my ignorance, and I hope I'm forgiven. But it's 6 of the 10 regions are in the Essequibo. Secondly, Essequibo is by miles the richest part of this country: oil, gold, diamonds. And now I discovered in researching an article I wrote for the Sabbath News, we have rare earths in the Essequibo.
In addition to manganese.
Manganese, So this Essequibo we're talking about and being quite flippant about in more ways than one, is a treasure house of this country.
And that a part of the Essequibo falls within the Guyana Shield.
Yes.
And in the Amazonian area as well.
Yeah.
And we know that I believe 20% or so of the world's fresh water is resident in that general,
that area. The water, yes.
So it's not just about minerals, but I continue to look at Guyana's response to this very, very near and present danger, and I can't help but being extremely worried.
Yeah.
The vulnerability of indigenous peoples is one issue, which to me is a major issue, because take, for example, the Rupununi. 65 indigenous villages are located in the Rupununi,
Yes, yes. Yeah.
right? If you look at
That's region 9. Is
nine, if you
yes.
look at region 1, a lot of region 1 is on the border.
Yes.
A lot of region 7 is on the border,
Yes.
right? And indigenous peoples, I've said this before, I say it again, families live on both sides of the border. And how do you deal with an issue of armed conflict in this kind of situation? But and so I want to make this as a passing point before we go to the next substantive issue. I do not get a sense that the government understands or treats with any kind of importance the indigenous population of this country, particularly as it relates to this issue of the territorial controversy. Whenever they speak, you get a sense that they're appealing to the coastal region.
Yes.
Without regard for the fact that indigenous peoples are traditional owners of these lands,
Yes.
in some cases now legal owners of these lands. They have spiritual connections to these lands, ancestral ties to these lands. And these things do not come out when you listen to government officials as they speak on this matter, which they rarely do.
Yeah.
And so I'm deeply troubled by that. And I'm also troubled by the fact that I don't get a sense that there's enough seriousness in treating with these issues.
Sorry if I intrude or interrupt you, Mr. Moderator, but that is so fundamental to what we've been discussing all afternoon. I said that we seemed in formulating our foreign policy to forget that this matter has an important bearing on the existence of our Aboriginal community. Look at the statements we've been issuing over time. There's no reference to the Aboriginal community, none at all.
No.
You know, and these are the people who are bearing the brunt of the activities from our Western neighbor. We don't know, as we speak here and talk, exactly what Maduro is doing among those populations. And nobody can convince me that Venezuela is not taking advantage of this confusion that is going on by inserting their people in between our own people. And it is a sad, to me, worrisome fact that we've never, over the past decade, for example, well, I shouldn't say we've never come up with a policy. There was a policy in place some time ago. But in recent times, we are just dealing with the implications for the Amerindian community as far as the border controversy is concerned on an ad hoc basis. The Chief of Staff goes in. The Minister of Home Affairs issues some statement. Foreign Affairs says something. But the core of the matter, which is the lives and existence of the Amerindian community, because if Venezuela comes over the border, they're the first people are going to be hit.
Of course.
You know, and we have not worked out yet, not only hit, as we just discussed, the wealth of that region, and apart from the mineral wealth, you pointed out, the wealth in terms of water. And water is a big problem. There are a lot of water-challenged nations all over the world right now. And Essequibo, that we used to call the Cinderella County, really should be called, it is where Guyana's wealth.
It's my El Dorado.
El Dorado. But no policy, even in the midst of all of the pressures and so on we're facing from Venezuela. There was one attempt that was made in the 80s to develop development plan under the PNC for the Essequibo, but since then, nothing has been done. We have to protect the Essequibo for a number of reasons, the reasons you and I have advanced tonight. And if, God forbid, that we should lose the Essequibo, it will be nobody's fault but our own.
I want to look at this last point on the program. And that has to do with a motion that was tabled by the PPP in the National Assembly. It's there on the notice paper number 142. This was scheduled to be debated on Friday. I have some serious difficulties with the motion, and I have issues with the manner of approach. I consulted with the opposition chief whip and learned that the People's Progressive Party never engaged the opposition
in drafting the resolution,
in drafting this motion. I don't even think that the opposition was notified about this motion before it was actually published in the order paper. But that's a different issue. Now, if you're speaking of unity on an issue, you're speaking of one Guyana, you're speaking of national consensus on a matter, how can you create a document, place it on the order paper for debate in the National Assembly without conferring with the opposition, which represents 50, perhaps even 51% of the people of this country?
What is the procedure when it's placed on the order paper? Is a consultation before or after it goes into Parliament? Or
No.
you have the opportunity when it goes to Parliament to offer amendments to the. No, I'm asking. I've never been a parliamentarian now.
Look, an issue such as this should be the preparation of this document, a collective approach to preparation of this document.
Okay, all right.
The usual thing is that, look, the document, the motion is prepared, it's placed it's presented to the clerk, it goes through a process. If it satisfies the requirement,
But the option is there for them to consult before they put it on the order.
of course there is.
Okay.
There's always that. So the process is after it is deemed to have satisfied the requirements, it goes on the order paper and so on. Yes, logically, you can go to the National Assembly, you can debate, and in the process of debating, you can propose amendments. You propose the amendments up front,
Yes.
right? And you move them at the appropriate time. You have a seconder, and the other side has an opportunity in wrapping up to say whether or not they accept the amendments.
Yeah.
And then the motion is passed as amended. If they reject it, well, that's it. But an issue as critical as this, there's no room for amendments on the floor. If you united on a matter, you united from concept.
Yes.
So when you draft together, you satisfy yourselves from both sides of the aisle that this is what we're going to go with. So when it goes there, everyone speaks in support of it without amendments, and it is carried.
I'm an old documents man, so I tend to read documents from the bottom and go up. Look at paragraph 6 that directs that copies of the resolution be transmitted to the Secretary General of the UN, the Commonwealth, the Organization of American States, the Organization of the ACP states, heads of state and government of the Caribbean community, as well as other relevant bodies.
But there's no Africa.
No Africa. Africa has 50. You say it over and over and over again.
The PPP has a fundamental problem with Africa.
Well, I hope.
And Africans, it is clear.
I hope, Mr. Moderator, that the implications of what you're saying are not true. How can you leave Africa out? I mean, I glanced at down there. If you go to the United Nations General Assembly and you don't get the African support, you're wasting time. You know.
I mean, there's no way that you can not have Africa there, even the ACP, whatever. You have to have them. But
Well, the other thing is, I don't know if the person who drafted this resolution is aware that the ACP is on its last legs, as it were, and you now have to the better option is to go to the African Unity organization. You know, the ACP is not a vibrant organization anymore. I think the government should know that. It's hard for the ACP to bring all of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states together. I can't remember exactly what happened, but over within the last 4 or 5 years, the ACP has been tottering, as it were.
Yeah, but you went to the last paragraph. I'm going to the first.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
And as it ended in disappointment, it started in disappointment.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and we'd like to have that up on the screen, please, so that the viewers can follow us. We're not making this up. Whereas the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is a sovereign state with exclusive rights and jurisdiction over its territory, including the region of Essequibo, as recognized under international law, does not the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, the supreme law of the land,
It's the sovereign rights
equally or more important than international law when it comes to sovereign rights?
Proceeds. The sovereign rights has to be based on the Constitution.
But where's that?
And mind you, the Constitution says that Guyana cannot lose territory. You can add.
Yes.
Cannot subtract.
Right.
Territory. Unless I think that there's a referendum. So there should have been a reference to the Constitution there, you know. And I've seen some other paragraphs which seems to me all jumbled up. They need to shorten some of these sentences and make them clearer and more precise. You know.
Look, Ambassador Austin, I know that you're a diplomat, and I know that you will choose the finest language not to offend. But I am not a diplomat, and I really do not aspire to be one, because perhaps of the constraints associated.
We can make you Minister of Foreign Affairs.
No, but
then you get a burning issue to the center of the foreign policy of the country.
Well, thank you very much. But here is the second paragraph, the second whereas clause, which speaks to, and I'm going straight to the point, constitutes a full and final settlement of the land boundary between British Guyana.
That is not accurate. It's a full and final settlement of all matters referred to it by the. If they use those terms, they must quote exactly what the 1897 treaty says.
This is my point. This thing is deficient beyond your imagination, coming from a government in a matter that is the lifeblood of this country.
Yeah.
This is. I mean, I'm sure if they had involved the opposition in drafting this document, we would have had a better document, because Ambassador Austin would have been part of the team.
I would have been willing. I would be more than willing to help.
You know.
Actually, the relevant paragraph is paragraph Article 12 of the 1897 treaty, where it says, the high contracting parties engage to consider the result of the proceeds of the Tribunal of Arbitration as a full, final, and perfect settlement of all questions referred to the arbitrators. Doesn't say land.
That was only one of the issues.
Yeah. Now, it's not. We understand what the resolution is trying to say, but if you're going to quote the 1897 treaty, you have to quote it accurately, and you could then weave the question of the land boundary into the paragraph.
You know, this motion was rescheduled. It was moved on to, I believe, the 23rd, 23rd of May, and I hope that the opportunity is taken to seriously address the defects of this document.
But I hope so, because I don't think, in all seriousness, they're not. This can't be the final version of this resolution. Look at the paragraph. Which one it is? I don't think. Okay, 1, 2, 3. The third paragraph. It's not only the unilateral release sought from 1962 to challenge and impugn the 1899 award. They accepted the award for 6 years. And then in 1962 decided, based on the Mali Provost memorandum, to challenge the 1899 award. So I glanced at it quickly after we spoke, and the historical narrative needs to be refined and to be made more precise. A lot of this is not correct. Sequentially, it's not. After the 1899 award, which Venezuela accepted, and accepted not only the award, but there's a map that followed the award, which was signed in 1905. They accepted that. And for over 60 years, nobody questioned the validity of the 1899 award until the Mali Provost memorandum was made public. And we were about to go to independence, they decided to challenge the 1899 award at the United Nations. That is not here, at the UN in 1962.
A lot of vital information that can strengthen this document is missing.
Yeah.
But while it is not our function to draft such a document, it's our responsibility, at minimum, to discuss
well,
it.
If you're approaching the opposition for support, you have to get your facts right, and you have to get your historical sequence as advanced in the document. You have to get it right. The section dealing with the Geneva Agreement needs some work.
It is a defective document as it stands. That, in summary, defines the motion that the People's Progressive Party has proposed to the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. The manner of approach is unacceptable. You cannot seek the opposition's full support and cooperation on any matter, particularly one as important as this one as crucial as this one to the very existence of Guyana as a nation.
Yes.
Without consulting with the opposition, without involving the opposition, at minimum, in the drafting of such a document. You cannot expect the opposition to come to the National Assembly of the Parliament of Guyana and say, in principle, we support you. However, we need to have this thing amended. We need to have 10 amendments in there. It lacks logic. So in my view, the People's Progressive Party needs to entirely withdraw that document. And if it has good intentions and believes in the process of consultation and believes in the process of involvement of the parliamentary opposition, which many believe represents a larger percentage of the population than the PPP itself does, then this is unacceptable, and they have to do much better than this.
Mr. Moderator, as we leave, as we come to the close of this program, I believe it's my patriotic duty to appeal to our government and to the party on which the government is based to take account of the seriousness of this question and to understand that national unity is not something that is only trotted out on important occasions, as in the case of the forthcoming elections that the Venezuelan proposal in the Escobar. National unity must move beyond rhetoric. It has to be serious. It has to be fundamental. If you want national unity, you have to create the conditions for national unity. You cannot have the People's National Congress and the leader of the opposition only supporting you when you need him to support you, and when in fact correspondingly nothing is being done to subserve the need for national unity. I mean, for example, when we come to a decision on the border controversy, like the need for a robust diplomatic strategy, for a greater education campaign, for the parliamentary committee on foreign affairs to be handed over to the PNC for obvious reasons. If the PNC was chairing that committee, I suspect that a lot of the difficulties in Parliament or beyond Parliament might have been both the PPP and the PNC would have been able to deal with those matters within the parliamentary committee. I don't know how it functions, but I suspect that is one thing the parliamentary committee could do. So I make one final appeal. National unity, yes, but create the conditions for national unity to take place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Austin. I want to close as I started on the question of the National Issues Council. The stage is being set for a number of things to be accomplished by the PPP. And in that regard, there's a Saturday article in the Starbuck News, which quotes a former Tushao and a political leader who betrayed the indigenous population of this country. And I'll quote a part of that article, which says the act, referring to the Amrinian Act, grants the Tushao the authority to represent and act in the best interests of the village, and sometimes such actions may conflict with the interest of some. I find it rather interesting that, having regard to what happened in the North Rupununi not so long ago with the denial of an application in the first instance and then a recanting and an apology for the actions by a particular Tushao, that this former Tushao, on almost the eve of the National Tushao Council's conference, can go down this path, misinforming the nation and misrepresenting the provisions of the Amrinian Act. I want to bring to the attention of our viewers that the Tushao is the first among equals. He's the chairman of a village council. He has one vote at the village council. He is not an absolute authority unto himself or over the village. And for the purposes of clarity, I want to make the second point, that the law provides that all decisions of the village council must be taken collectively, not by the Tushao, regardless of how he feels about an issue. And I also want, in closing, to read for you the duties of the Tushao. And this is section 22 of the Act. It says the Tushao shall A, represent the interests of the village at all times, carry out his duties with honesty and integrity, chair all meetings of the village council and ensure that all matters concerning the village are adequately addressed, participate on behalf of the village in the National Tushao Council, on behalf of the village council and subject to the rules of the meetings, attend and participate at meetings, provide the village general meeting with a report of every meeting which he attends on their behalf, provide the minister with a copy of the residency rules and residency rules made under section 14, provide the minister with a copy of annual accounts prepared by the village council, and finally, report to the minister on matters which affect the village. The Tushao, contrary to what is quoted in that Starbuck News report, is not empowered to do as is suggested. The Tushao is a servant of the people, a chairman of the village council, a justice of the peace, and a rural constable. Ambassador Austin, I thank you very much for your time and participation in Nation Watch as always. And I wish the Tushaos, as they gather tomorrow for the commencement of the National Tushaos Council, all the very best for a successful conference. And I urge and I encourage you to speak up, speak out, and ensure that the interest of the people of your villages are properly represented. And as we go into elections 2025, that you assume the independence that we know you're capable of and resist attempts by the People's Progressive Party to manipulate you and to get you to do things related to their political campaign if you're not so inclined. Thank you very much again, Ambassador Austin. And I wish to thank, as always, our viewers and listeners for joining us from wherever you are and staying the course of the program. Until we meet again, God bless.